in a sense, it's a dream come true, you know, getting to tell this story and being the person to tell this story. Um, it's yeah, it's fun anytime you get to play an anti-hero. I think as an actor, especially because you know there's a lot more angles that you can attack, and a lot more controversy that you can kind of stir up when you get to be the anti-hero, not so much the Superman, the good guy hero in a sense where you know he's always going to do right, where you almost got to question this guy's every move, whether you like it or not, it's still something to question.
And this Rufus Buck gang and the members who play, they're gone so far past the point of redemption in terms of
Mm.
you almost feel from the beginning of the movie that you watch it that their fate is already sealed, that there's no going back for them. Once they've taken that sort of first step, they've sort of, dare I say, they've put the nails in their coffin, dare I say, and there's almost there's almost like a full circle. It almost comes anti-clockwise in the end with the sort of shootouts in the shootout where we have in the house where the law is sort of descending on them. That they always knew that sort of fate. They were just probably kidding themselves in terms of saying that it wouldn't sort of come their way, but then they sort of, even Rufus himself bears the sort of truths to his disciples, dare I say, that he knew from
Mm.
the beginning that this sort of demise was eventually going to come their way.
Right, right. So what exactly was the question, James?
So my question in terms of that is, do you almost sort of feel playing the sort of characters and sort of that sort of role, that sort of that sort of demise in terms of that, to sort of to portray those sort of emotions in terms of that, just because that sort of house sort of scene, dare I say, it's very sort of touching. It's the first time we see a bit of realism in terms of the characters, in terms of Rufus himself accepting what the fate has
Right.
brought in store for them.
Right. And I think that's one of the fun things about a Western, where in Westerns it's almost like it's lawless, right? So it's almost you almost can in a Western you feel like can commit murders and still ride off into the sunset. So it's you get a little bit of like, can they get out of it? Because it is the West. It is a time when it was, you know, the quickest gun wins and the quickest gun can tell the story. Um, so you do fall in love with the characters a bit, but you see it in them, like you said, in the house scene, and they're just fooling themselves in a sense, like it's you guys, there's no redemption in how far they're going. So you just kind of just you take it for what it is and you enjoy it.
And I suppose, Charlie, in terms of to portray Rufus Buck as a barbaric sort of character, what was director Paul G. Volk's vision for you, and in terms of portraying? And was that for sort of the first hanging scene where we see you hanging the father of the son off the sort of tree? Was that really to set this tone of how vicious this character was in terms of sealing the fates of people? In terms of, was that key for Paul? That sort of scene, was that a real key scene to set the tone of the movie?
Um, I think so. I think it sense that because I speak like a little biblical in that scene. I think it sets the tone of like this is it's coming down, like this is truthfully, like this is what he believes almost in scripture, that this is that what he feels is right and what you guys do is wrong. Working with Paul was great. I don't think there was anything that was ever too set in stone that had to be done, had to be done this way. I think it was it was more of a collaboration with Paul and the other actors and myself. Um, that scene in particular, we had to work out a lot of things for that scene for it to work. Because going into it, there's a lot more to that scene that we ended up having to cut. But going into it, me and Brian, we had to get together and kind of mold it our own way into so it could fit the time that we had, and it could fit the actual the film, because some of the things that we needed weren't there. I believe we actually originally wanted a donkey for that scene, but they didn't have a donkey. I was supposed to ride in on a donkey, which is the reason why we want to steal the horse, and but we didn't have a donkey, so we had to, like any film, it's always, it's a process. You never come in set in stone.
And Charlie, one of the key characteristics and one of the sort of key players, and it's almost an actor in the movie itself, is the location and the scenery and the backdrop
Yes.
that you're shooting all these sorts of scenes. It's fantastic in terms of it really captures the sort of the soul of the 1800s. And in terms of the location of shooting, you shot in California. Was there a certain area in particular that you centered on in terms of most of the sort of the scenes, in terms of the offshoot location shooting?
Yes, I believe every shot was shot in Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure, I would like to say every scene was shot in Santa Clarita. Some of the scene, we have some of the little town scenes. I believe that was in Santa Clarita. I believe they used some of that for Tombstone as well, from the old movies in the '90s. But yeah, the whole setting is like you said, it's almost like a character in itself, because it just lends to the movie so well. And just being there and being on that big piece of land and shooting there, it really helps to bring everyone in and get really into the characters.
Mm. And there's sort of some we almost talk about these Western movies that are cowboy and Indians, and they're sort of shoot 'em up type of movies, but there's sort of
Mm,
some serious tones and serious topics in this sort of movie as well, especially the treatment of women and how women were treated back in the 1800s, in terms of they were mainly seen as pawns, tools at one sort of disposal and leisure. So there's sort of
right.
some sort of scenes here that maybe they aren't over the top in terms of graphic, in terms of that it's sort of light, it's sort of mellow, but it still gives off the sort of notions of what is involved, and the sort of scenes there that maybe sort of are disturbing in terms of how women were sort of treated in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did our best, because that's touchy, and no matter what kind of film you're making, that kind of subject matter, when you're dealing with, violence, you want to be truthful, but you also don't want to be, you don't want to make it uncomfortable, because it's entertainment at the end of the day. So we just try to attack each scene, and when it came to that, with try to make it a little bit, throw more comedy towards it, or just to make it more lighthearted, even though what we're doing was some pretty, ruthless, and some would say gruesome things. But I think we just attacked it with a little bit more of a lighthearted way, just to make sure that it wasn't coming across that, that it's just too rough to watch, because at the end of the day, you want to kind of root for the Rufus Buck gang, and if we're doing all these things, it's going to be hard to root for them if we're doing it a little too violently.
Mm. And Charlie, another big sort of key player, and we all talk about the actors in terms of the success of the movie. We mentioned the location, but a big shout out has to go to your stunts team and your props team in terms of the sequence, in terms of the shootouts, in terms of the realism, in terms of obviously the riding sort of stunts. So it's very full on in terms of the role, in terms of sort of stunts. There's various sorts of shootouts, and in terms of choreography, in terms of shooting some of those sort of shootout scenes and stunt scenes, were we talking maybe a full day or two of trying to get it from different angles, different takes, different lightings, in terms of those sorts of shootings? Is that sometimes as challenging for an actor, even more challenging, dare I say, when there are non-lines, where you're just running these sorts of scenes over and over again?
Yeah, you never know what's going to be the most challenging when you come to set. Sometimes, some days it may be just, a word or two just can't seem to escape your mouth, or then some days you're right, the gunplay is just exhausting, and you got to keep poking your head around the corner just so the camera can catch you and then you catch that. Um, for this, none of the shots for the shootouts were too extenuous. A lot of this shooting was run and gun, no pun intended, but it was all, we had to shoot in 9 days. So it was pretty much, if you have an idea, let's rock out and let's go out and shoot this and see and hopefully it comes out good. And it seems that it all did. We didn't spend too long on the shooting scenes. They're funny to shoot because in the film it's like all it's action packed, shoot here, shoot there, but then when you're shooting it's a lot of just it's start and cut, start and cut, start and cut. So you just hope that it gets spliced together in the editing room.
And I suppose, Charlie, there's sort of different sort of angles we see the movie. We see the movie from the Rufus Buck gang point of view. We see the movie from the law point of view in terms of Tim Abel's character, Thomas. But we also see, dare I say, a narrative point of view from Danny Trejo as well, who's almost telling the sort of story to our would-be listeners in sort of the pub. So we've got 3 different concurrent angles running through the movie. And although your angle and Heck Thomas' character angle overlap, the Trejo one is the one constant that stays separate.
Yeah. So what exactly was the question?
Yeah. So in terms of meshing those angles together, it can be challenging at some times. But it starts to play off. There's a nice blend where we flip from one to the other. It seems to work well, but that can be challenging if there's not really a connection in the movie. But you seem to have got the connection right.
Yeah, we brought Trejo in, actually, funny enough, later on in the film. It was originally, there wasn't going to be a narration, and then we were lucky enough to get Trejo, so we decided to make him a narrator. And yeah, it blends the film, I think, beautifully. It's because it just makes it to where it's all the true events, but because it's being narrated through Trejo's eyes, it almost feels like it's elevated to like a more lively. It's more theatrical just because it's being told through Trejo. Even though they're true events, they're being told through someone else's eyes. And yeah, I agree. They all mesh so well together. And you get to see Tim Abel, you get to see me and my gang, and then yeah, Trejo brings it all together.
And I suppose, Charlie, and coming to the last 1 or 2 questions now, and I suppose in terms of that sort of final showdown between Rufus Buck and Heck Thomas, where you're sort of, dare I say, you seem to have the upper hand first of all, and then obviously a slip of a gun in terms of a faulty trigger and something, and then the roles are reversed into his sort of favor as well. But they're almost to get that O'Kane Corral, that sort of final sort of showdown where it's 2 guys sort of pitted against each other. And in terms of rubbing off, in terms of that chemistry for that sort of final sort of scene, in terms of that, had you sort of different angles on how you were going to take it, maybe once or twice before you sort of settled on the final sort of take on that?
Yeah, that was a doozy going into that day, because we no one could really agree on how we wanted to do that scene. It was originally written that Rufus, I think it was originally written, Rufus puts his gun down, and then because I think Heck Thomas calls him, calls him a name, and he's like, "Oh well, I'll fight you." And me personally, I didn't want to do that because I felt like that was kind of a disrespect towards the character, and then I wanted to win the fight in a sense, and then and Heck Thomas personally thought like that's a disrespect. So it was a lot of coming together and just trying to find what could work for both characters and for the film in total. So we finally came across the idea, the gun kind of slipping up, but then we also we wanted to add that element of kind of trying to coerce the Indian police And that was the element that I think we all agreed upon that would help the film.
And how important, sort of penultimate question now for you, second last question, Charlie. How
Yeah.
important was it for you to show off the other members of the Rufus Buck gang as well, for them to have all for their characteristics and their characters to show off, that to show that in terms, sometimes we get leaders of these gangs and they're overpowering in terms of, and sometimes
Yeah.
we look at the movies and we're trying to sort of, the other characters are fleeting sort of memories in terms of that, because they don't say much. They maybe have one one liners and one words or one or two words at best. But how important was it for the success of the night that come home, and for portraying the Rufus Buck gang, that the members of the Rufus Buck gang outside of Rufus had a good lot of ways to express their own sort of characters and express their own individuality as well throughout the movie?
Yeah, no, a major, very important. I remember I saw an edit and I kind of got back to the team, the directors and everybody. I was like, I tried to fight for more scenes for the gang member, not just Rufus, but for the gang members, just because um I felt like a big part of this movie was seeing the gang and how much they respected Rufus, because I felt like Rufus isn't much without the gang, right? So you need to show that camaraderie, and I think that's what kind of sells this, a lot of this movie, makes it good, is the camaraderie that they have. And you're right, like a lot of movies you'll see like the leader of the gang kind of overpowers everything. I think with this, the Rufus Buck gang, it is a full gang. It's legitimate. Like each one of them has their own identity and has their own purpose. It's not just a gang, and they, like, and Rufus kind of runs them. They all kind of have their own thing, though Rufus does kind of, lead it. But it's it it's very much needed that you kind of see the ins and outs of the gang, because that's just how the movie rolls, and the camaraderie is really what sells it.
And I suppose Charlie Townsend, now for the final 30 seconds, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rufus Buck himself. For all the Irish going cinema viewers, for all those who are going to see the special release of The Night They Come Home in the cinemas here in Ireland, to watch yourself, Weston Cage, Danny Trejo, Tema Bell, Kelsey Reinhardt, Anna Florence, to name but a few, appearing in the movie. For the final 30 seconds, Charlie, Rufus himself, what's in store for them?
What's in store for Rufus?
What's in store for the movie going viewers?
Oh,
Yeah, in terms of
what's in
watching.
store? I see. Yeah. Oh man, it's a fun ride that they just prepare to enjoy. Prepare to enjoy, because I feel like it's a different type of film. As soon as you allow yourself to be taken in by the film, it's pure enjoyment. There's a lot of there's a lot of socio-political things you can take away from it that'll have you probably talking while the credits are rolling, just because you're gonna want to pick apart a lot of things in this film, and